Welcome to the Bread and Thorns podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Isaac.
And I'm Rosemary.
And welcome to the very first episode of the Bread and Thorns podcast.
Woo!
You excited?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're finally doing this.
It's taken a while.
How many weeks has it been? I think
Weeks?
we started...
I feel like we should say months.
Yeah, it's probably been months. Yeah, I think we first
weeks.
came up with the idea even before the whole...
I think it was like February, March. It was like, it was March.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was before the music store shut down, but it was still solid. Like we were still there. It was just not.
Yeah, we were meeting, and then we were like, let's do a podcast, and then everything got shut down.
Literally within like 3 weeks, I was like, oh.
And then I think you posted on Instagram, right, that we were.
Yeah, we're getting started. We're gonna get started in April. Let's go.
And now we're in July.
The end of July.
All right. So since this is the introductory episode, we're gonna be going over kind of what our podcast is gonna be about, or won't be about. Probably just talk about what it'll be about and kind of introduce ourselves so that you, our listeners, would know what the heck you're listening to. Mm-hmm. But yeah, first, Rosemary, I don't know how to start this anymore looking at this thing, but it's okay. Rosemary, you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So, hi guys, I'm Rosemary. And a little bit about me, I'm someone who likes coming up with out-of-the-box ideas, which probably has something to do with being an Orthodox Christian homeschooled nerd. And I struggled a lot to learn acceptable social skills, so I was alone a lot, and I became one of those nerds who created worlds and read about the adventures and friends and universes that I wanted to have and explore. And so I really liked to write songs and stories while sitting barefoot in trees and avoiding people my own age, because that's what you do when you're homeschooled and a nerd.
Guys.
Yep,
she
totally.
was that guy, or girl, sorry. She was that girl sitting up in the tree.
Absolutely.
Everyone was pointing at her.
It's called being whimsical, Isaac. There is a word, and I like the word.
I would have called it just weird.
This is why we're friends now. Anyway, okay, so, but basically, I create different kinds of art because I want to see it outside of my inner world. Like, I write stories and poems that I want to read. I paint and sketch works that I want to see, and I really love being able to share my odd and interesting ideas with people who might like them too, which is how Isaac and I started being friends, is because we basically we had fun insulting and being sarcastic and having fun at the music store where Isaac was a teacher and I worked on the sales floor. And so it was something where we started talking about books and movies and things that we were interested in, and we're like, oh, okay, this is fun. And so we moved that into talking about the stuff that we actually created, and so that was kind of how we got into it. So it's definitely fun.
You have a Instagram, right?
I do. So it's rose.e with a couple underscores. We'll have links and things if you want to go check it out.
Oh yeah, we're supposed to talk about that later.
Yeah,
All right, so.
But that's something where the Instagram page that I have is just for the poetry and songs portion, and it will eventually become more into stories, or I'll have a secondary page for the stories. Isaac and I actually have an Instagram page that's specifically for the studios that we'll talk a little bit more about, like why and what we are, and that's there. And then Isaac also has like a YouTube channel that he does specifically for music. And actually, if you want to tell him a little bit more about that, because that is a whole thing into itself, why. Tell our people why you got into...
You sound like you wanted to introduce me.
I was having fun with it,
You're going into it.
Oh, wow, it's almost like I know
why
you.
Why don't you tell everybody what I am?
Isaac, you can discuss why you have a YouTube channel for very, very nuanced music.
Oh, that's true. It's quite
very
a weird...
nuanced.
Yeah, very, very niche audience. Yeah, so my name is Isaac, and I am a musician and a music teacher, as well as a writer. I do have a YouTube channel, but that's not how I started. I started when I was kind of 5 years old, and my mom, I'm Asian American, for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you guys. But I'm Asian American, and as an Asian American, you are, it's part of your genetic duty to learn musical instruments. And so, I'm just kidding. Or am I?
Well, no. Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, depends on what it is, right? And so, yeah, I started learning piano at the age of 5, and then for some reason I decided, hey, why don't I add the hardest instrument ever to learn? And so I decided to add violin onto that the year after, at 6 years old. And then after that, I think it was around 5th grade, I started learning to play acoustic guitar. I found out after that acoustic guitar isn't most of the guitar that you hear in the radio. It's mostly electric, and so I was like, oh, I'll learn electric too. And then I learned drums and the bass, and pretty soon I was my own 5-piece band. But of course, I only have 2 hands and 2 legs, and 2 feet.
And you're not Dick Van Dyke, so you can't just use all of it at once.
So sometimes I do wish kind of like I could duplicate myself. Like that's the superpower I want.
You'd want to have clones so you could have your own band.
Right, yeah. Just like see the Isaac band, and then people can just come see like this one guy, but multiples of them just like play all these instruments.
That'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
What would be really funny is if like bands like Kiss were like that, where that's why they have to wear all the makeup is because they're just clones of themselves.
Like, well, you do have like those bands where they like wear masks, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't really tell who the person is, and so. But this would be real. Like this would be just legitimately one person who just duplicated himself and just became a 5-piece band by himself.
All right.
Yeah. And so I learned all those instruments. Most of them. So other than piano and violin, of course, I learned the rest of the instruments. It was kind of self-taught. For violin and piano, it was. I was classically trained, and then I decided to kind of make my own way. And so, also being part of a church, my dad being a pastor, I decided to help him or help our church, I guess, with the little worship team that we had. And then from there, I think I started when I was 15, and then from there, just kind of worked on up into college. College, I didn't actually get any kind of a creative degree. I decided to go into psychology. And then after I graduated, I was like, you know what? I want to go back into music, and so I started teaching again, and that's what I've been doing since then. I'm my vocation as a music teacher.
So while music is important to both of us, the thing that I always love more.
This is her way of saying that she doesn't like music, by the way.
I prefer writing.
Heavily prefer
writing. Like, I love music. I listen to music all the time. That doesn't mean that like I would give up the written word if like just no for music. Anyway. Why did you start?
Well, you're a poet,
writing?
right? You can like put your poetry to music.
Oh no, I do.
And beats.
Yes,
and
but
rap.
I would still choose fictional.
Guys,
like,
she's a really good
stuff.
rapper. I don't actually know if that's true. Maybe in the future we'll have a podcast where she just
have a rap
raps.
battle.
Yeah,
have a rap
oh,
battle?
I won't be in it. Like.
Okay, we'll bring in a guest. I'll pick someone who's actually good at rapping, and we'll rap off. And eventually, I'll just devolve into laughter, and it'll work. It'll be great.
It'll be awesome.
Yeah. Wait, no, but okay. So with the writing, because you didn't talk about the writing. So with the writing, what did you get into, and like why did you get into the writing?
Okay, you're right. So writing was actually something that I did when I was a child, just kind of by myself. Mm-hmm. I think it's similar to you. I started because I really liked reading. One of the things, like my mom would always ask me, "What do you want?" And I would just be like, "I just want to read books." And so I would read like books like, do you remember like Boxcar Children? Did you ever read that?
No.
No, it was like a mystery series, kind of like Hardy Boys, or was it Nancy Drew and stuff, that kind of stuff.
I read those.
It was kind of like in that category when I was a kid, and so, it's still in that category. But when I was a kid, I read it, and then I was like, kind of from there, I kind of got really obsessed with reading, and then of course, as with all readers, I was like, I want to create my own worlds, create my own stories, and so I think starting probably around the age of 7, I think that's when I got my first legitimate computer. It was a really thick laptop that was donated to our family. And I think my brother didn't want it, and so he was just like, "Just here, just write, just do whatever you want." And so I started writing on it. And
ironically, I'm still really jealous of the fact that you got a computer at the age of 7.
It was actually I really like that computer.
Like you're still like older than me, and still like the person who should have gotten the technology like faster because of my age, and you're the one with a computer at the age of 7.
Yeah, I think someone from our church donated it to my dad, and my dad at that point had a full-on desktop thing. And so he didn't need it, so he gave it to my brother. My brother, I think, just didn't want it or something like that, and so he just gave it to me. And so I just started writing on it. It was great because that old of a computer, you really can't do anything else.
No.
It was we had the video game chip on it,
God.
and it was like this little guy that goes around, and you can do and Minesweeper, that was on there as well. Yeah.
Minesweeper.
That was great.
That's good times.
Yeah. So that was all you could play, and a child can only be so entertained by those games. I think, at least me as a child, I could only be so entertained by those games. And so I decided to write on it, and then from there just kept on writing up until high school, I think. and they were all mostly like, so when I read Harry Potter, right, I would make like a Harry Potter style story, right? When I read Lord of the Rings, I wanted to make my own fantasy elves like story, and
just for the
stuff.
purpose of, so it wasn't like fan fiction type stories. It was just,
No.
oh, I was inspired by the world.
Yeah.
I want my own version of this world.
The Harry Potter one, I did kind of do it because I like the idea that these wizard characters came from our real world in a sense and had their own side world, and so I did do that, so I had like references to that. But the one that was more fantasy based was definitely just its own thing. Like, I didn't want to copy Tolkien or anything like that, other than the fact that I used elves and dwarves and humans and those kinds of things. But I wanted to create my own thing there. When I got into superheroes, I made my own superhero stories and things like that, and I wrote them like kind of all until high school. And then the sad thing, of course, that I told you before, right, is that my computer crashed. At that point, it wasn't on the laptop. Yeah, it was a desktop that my parents had gotten me at that point, and the hard drive crashed super hard, and so I couldn't boot it up. I couldn't do anything with it. The only thing I could do, I think, was I took the computer, I think, to like Best Buy or something like that, and they could only download like information, but not like readable information, right? And so it's
How
all
does
the
that
like.
even make sense? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's kind of like you have in a word processor, and this is probably how I found out about it, but in a word processor you have like the text, right, that you're writing, but then in order to do like paragraphs, right, there's a code bit there that tells the thing to go into another paragraph or into another page. And then there's lots of stuff behind the scenes in there. So it downloaded all of those little things.
Except for the important part.
Well, no, it has the important part, but it's all mixed in, like really random jargon. And so you would have like, this elf did this, and then just complete gibberish for the rest of it. And so it was basically unsalvageable. And I think as a high schooler, I was like, I got too busy, and so I just didn't want to salvage it. I still have some semblance of it somewhere. Of those files, but it was all destroyed. So basically, and I think that stopped me for a while. I had other stuff that I was developing, like in a notebook. I think at that point I was reading the Silmarillion or something like that, and so I wanted to make my own like history of my fantasy world, and so I did that. But then I kind of stopped, and then into college I got more into film, and so started to think about film writing and all this kind of stuff. And then it was only, I think, a couple years ago that I decided, hey, I want to keep on writing. And then that was close to the time when we met. And then that's, I guess, that's history.
Yeah.
A little bit.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And that was actually like one of the most fun things was like, I'd been working for a little while, and so I hadn't really taken the time to genuinely take myself to task and finish anything. And so it's something where for Isaac, like meeting and being able to talk about our stories and receive feedback about our stories, and then do something with them. Like, we actually did work on the stories that we were talking about and bring different things to light that we hadn't talked about in years was really, really nice.
Yeah, when I think back, actually, I think I was pretty critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the beginning. So I was very... I'm actually a little bit surprised. Yeah, a little bit surprised we continued that. It's
he was just like an honest jerk, and it was appreciated.
The first time you shared something, it was like, oh no, that's wrong. Oh no, that's bad.
Well, okay,
no, don't write that.
Okay, little tidbit. Okay, so when I say that I create the worlds and adventures and friends that I want to have, that means that so my stories are legitimately what I want, which means that if I want very simple things, they're going to be repeated throughout the stories. And so even though trust me, you will have to trust me with this, but they are good individual stories. But my stories tend to be very...
Oh, I thought you were saying I should trust you. Oh, you're talking to our listeners.
Yes. You trust me however much you're going to trust me, and I can no longer change that. Anyway, but you guys listening out there, you have to trust me that, my characters are characters that they're people that I have created to fall in love with. Not in a weird way. I mean, just in general, when you find out about people on the street and you're like, oh, I really want to be friends with that person. Those are the kind of characters that I create. And so what Isaac identified that first time was that I have a very, very fun and entertaining way of basically guy, girl, tragedy. And so he like he very
That's actually very
quickly,
true. For those who are listening.
he very quickly, but like I talked about like 3 stories in like one session or whatever, and he was like, oh, so this is what that is. And I was like, okay, yes, and yet profoundly no. And he's like, so it's this. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so it just continued on from there. But it also helps.
Yeah, I think at a certain point I identified that pattern,
Yeah.
right? I didn't know about it, but I was kind of like I was looking at it. I was
You
thinking,
joked about it in like within the first few like meetings and whatnot, and then afterwards you were like, oh wait, no, this is an actual thing.
Yeah, it was
for
an actual.
you.
You have this problem.
This is an intervention.
Let me bring my buddies. Let me bring some psychologists.
But one of the things is, so I have a really good imagination, and I am very, very curious. So when Isaac was talking about his worlds or the different things because he loves ambiance and like the certain magical setting and how this works, but then to actually come up with
did I even finish introducing my music
there?
That's true.
You did not. We got sidetracked by the writing.
We gotta go back to it. So just to introduce that ambiance thing. So if you go onto my YouTube channel, which I'll share later, you'll find that the music that I'm producing is mostly ambient music. Mm-hmm. I think there's no real proper term for it other than ambient music that's produced by modular synthesis. Mm-hmm. So there's not much of it's kind
of lo-fi.
It is there's some of it that's lo-fi. I think I designed some of it to be that way. But there's no genre specific outside of like that ambient thing. And so that's kind of what Rosemary is talking about.
Yeah, and so he does that with stories a lot. And so it's something where my curiosity would pull plots for him versus his criticism would help me make my characters and plots and like worlds more tight, more real. And so it was a really, really fun and great way to start of just like encouraging each other.
So criticism is the way to start with you. That's what you're saying right now.
Okay. Yes.
So if someone just comes up to you and he's like, your work sucks, and you'd be like, you're the greatest person ever.
Okay. No, if they help me after the criticism, yes. If they just walk up and are like, hey, you suck at your life, like I'm gonna not want to talk to you again. Like
Never mind. You're not gonna help me. Yeah, and I think that's when we were working together, right, on that, and then I came up with the idea of let's work on a project together rather than just the feedback thing. And for those who are following us from our Instagram, that's where hello there. Thank you for following us all this way. We super appreciate you.
Yes, really, legitimately.
Very seriously, we very much appreciate you for staying with us. But that's where the first few Instagram posts that we had for Bread and Thorns, because we decided, hey, let's work on this thing together. How are we going to, I guess, brand it? How are we going to kind of do this organizational thing? And that was very much in almost like a gestational period where we were coming up with all these ideas. And we came up with this idea, Wanderlost, but then life happened. We were working with an artist, and so I am very, 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 very new to being able to describe things to professionals. So he loved working with Isaac because Isaac was used to like certain terminology and specifics, and I kind of kept giving him like vague ideas about how characters were supposed to look, and he kept getting really frustrated. I don't think it was vague, right? It was very specific on certain things that he didn't need to know about, right?
Well, it was okay.
This girl likes to sit in trees and think about really weird stuff.
I promise I don't project myself that obviously into characters.
But it was kind of like that, right?
Kind of. Like it was like the kind of like okay, when you see a character in a movie, when you meet a character and there's the feel of the character, I have a lot of feelings and emotions about how those characters are supposed to be introduced. And so with comics, the idea is that you're getting this physical picture of them, and they're not live. So you have to come up with that feeling and that emotion and that their will, like how you see that physically in a two-dimensional way. And so I was very picky about that, and so I didn't want to have like half-rate work because I couldn't speak up about, wait, no, that's not perfect. And
I
didn't really phrase it the best way. I got better as we went on, but by that point he was already
I think he was frustrated with working with us. And so that
But we got the sketchworks that are on
Oh, right. So that's
Instagram
how we
page.
got the sketchworks on Instagram, but then we kind of didn't go forward with that because, I mean, if an artist was uncomfortable working with us, then we didn't really want to have to force him or try to force them into doing it.
being able to figure it out first.
Yeah, but neither of us can draw.
Yeah.
So we decided to kind of table the project for a while.
Music, writing, like we could probably like drive and bike and do a bunch of other. I don't know why those are the examples I did, but like
I don't know
we
why
can do a lot of things. But drawing, Isaac is actually a better cartoonist than I am. He took different classes and a couple things, so he actually was working on something, and he still is. And so there are different things that he's good at. I am much better at like really awesome doodles, which means that it's really hard to be like, this is the character.
Doodles run the world, man.
Yeah, but I can't like draw a character and then draw the same exact character
over
the same way.
Yeah, that's
it
different.
Doesn't work very well for me,
different.
and that's just practice. It's just that I don't practice enough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then life happened. We couldn't keep working on it, but we still met up to kind of discuss our own stuff, our own projects that we were working on, and that's when I proposed the idea of why don't we just kind of turn our personal work, feedback for our personal works. Why don't we just talk about it and keep each other accountable through something like a podcast, right? And so that's where this podcast idea was born, where we can. Bread and Thorns itself was kind of like where we can work on our projects and kind of promote our individual stuff, but we decided, hey, let's do a podcast to kind of keep ourselves accountable to each other, as well as hopefully an audience that might be interested in what we're saying. That's where the podcast idea was, and that's when you posted it back in April. We're gonna do a podcast soon, guys! Yay! And then June or May came along, and June, July, and then I don't know when we're gonna release this actual podcast, so.
Just in case, happy Halloween, guys.
Hopefully it won't be that long. But it'll be somewhere probably in there. But yeah, so this is our podcast that we're doing. And let's talk about the podcast format, since this is, again, that introductory episode. So as we talked about what we wanted to do with the podcast, we discovered that, hey, we don't necessarily always have something to produce that is in kind of like in a presentable form for like any kind of audience, even like to ourselves, right? And so we decided, well, let's make the podcast more about things that we like, right? The artworks that we like, films that we like, the stories, obviously, or novels or anything like that we like, and then kind of in doing that, kind of talk about how we were inspired by those works, or we really like certain aspects or themes about those things, and from there, kind of do the podcast around that, and then have maybe our works around that. And so generally what we have planned for the podcast is that we're going to either watch a movie or read a book, or maybe read a short story, or talk about maybe like even a work of art, right? Just a graphical or a sketch or whatever.
Something cool. We're going to pick up something cool in some way, and then we're going to talk about it, and hopefully you guys enjoy how we talk about it.
Hopefully we won't be so boring.
Hopefully you don't just be like,
what are these two talking about there? What's wrong with them?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot wrong
there's
with us.
There's a lot wrong with us. So maybe our audience will make fun of us. That'll be great too.
Oh, yeah.
Engagement based on how...
Oh, no, trust me. The best insults will be read out loud during the podcast. If you actually come up with some...
So what is our plan? Make such a bad podcast that all our reviews and all our...
Just mock us. Mock us and
then we'll read...
will respect you.
That goes with like kind of what I was saying before, right? Where we kind of want to not take ourselves too seriously, so we'll just
we're reviewing art. The greatest puns and the greatest set downs deserve to be appreciated.
So what's the art that's being criticized here? Us?
I was gonna say their comments about us, but sure.
So our reactions to feedback.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we'll be taking the movies or anything like that, and we'll just be talking about them, talk about what we like, maybe how it's influenced us. Yeah. And then from there, kind of relate it to how we're working on various projects
how it's influenced us. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So for getting started with this, what we decided on, where both of us have, Isaac has a much more defined top 10, so I had to actually like define mine considerably more. partially because he's very critical. So I needed to actually have reasons
and again, Rosemary is
explanations.
introducing me for me, so.
Yes, that's it helps. Anyway, and so we decided that we were going to go through our top 10 movies and we're going to pick them out at random. Though a couple of them actually coincided, and so it's something where we're going to go through our top 10 plus a few honorable mentions and basically go through and talk about why we love these movies so much and force the other person to watch them.
Oh yeah. There are some movies on her list that I don't agree with, probably. Very much.
Movies on your list that I don't agree with. They're just ones that I'm not like 100% in love with and want to watch every year. That's one of those cricket noises moments.
Oh yeah, we need to get a soundboard. Cricket.
That is in the works.
Yeah, and so for I think it's the next probably 20 episodes, because that would be top 10s for both of us. But then with the ones
a couple of honorable mentions.
Yeah, we have the honorable mentions to fill out that 20. We're going to be going over our top 10s for movies, basically movies that we love, or the top 10 movies that I would say the greatest films of all time for me, right? In my opinion, these are the greatest films of all time. I think you have a slightly different criteria, right?
So for me, it's a little bit more, because there are a lot of movies that like every single movie on his list, I agree with why it's on his list. I absolutely think that they're beautiful on so many different levels, but like I said, I like creating characters that I fall in love with. So my top 10 is about movies and stories and characters that I fall in love with every single time that I watch these movies. And so every single time that I go into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love them so much. And I start like doing the whole like little fluff dance of just like, this is so cute, or like so real, or at some point I probably have cried during one of these movies. Like it's just, there's a really big emotional connection for me with these movies. It's not just that they're like I hate this word, that their cinematography is beautiful. I was trying to use it as an adjective, adverb, and it failed.
Cinematic.
No, but
right?
No, I was gonna do cinematography.
No, it's cinematic. I'm pretty sure it's cinematic. That's the word you're looking for. Keep in mind, everybody, she's a writer and a poet, not a. I don't even know. First of all,
I used to read the dictionary quite often, so I am usually proud of my vocabulary.
So this is just on you.
This is just sad. This is one of those sad moments where my mind.
I was trying to give you a way out of that, but that didn't work.
No, this is my whole. I'm gonna enjoy it. Anyway. Basically, like, even though each of the movies that I picked, they are really, really beautiful, there's also, like, a lot of them have a simplicity to it that some of Isaac's really don't, because he enjoys having depth and complexity, and even though I enjoy that too, my top 10 are movies that I can, like, if someone says that they want to watch it with me today, I am almost always down to like watch this movie with whoever, and I can watch these movies with whoever it pops up with. So, but basically we're going to go through our top 10 list, and as we pick them out, as we're talking about them, we'll tell you like whose list they were on and what number they were in. So it is going to be random. So the idea is to kind of go through them.
Yeah, I think like
somewhat randomly.
We have a hat to pick them out of, right? So that's what we're going to do probably near the end of each episode. We're going to be picking the next movie out of a hat for fun.
It's also a funky hat. I know you can't see it, but it has
yeah, it's a great visual thing that will not be going on the podcast. So.
But it makes me happy.
But it'll be fun.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's our plan. Oh, I didn't really talk about. So my top 10 would be. It wouldn't necessarily be just the emotional kind of attachment that I would have. Although I would say I think I would.
You have become emotionally attached to all of these movies.
To all of these movies,
yeah.
Especially my top 5. I think it's no argument that I really really love these movies. But for me, the criteria would have been something like that these are movies that I would recommend to anybody anywhere to watch. I would always want to. So it's still similar in a sense, right?
It's very similar. Right. It's honestly, it's legitimately just so like because. I actually wrote it down because I thought it was funny. But so, okay, so
she's reading from her paper now.
So his 5 reasons in reverse order. So cinematography, the director, so how impressive the director is and how they were able, like the influence of the director on a film, the thematic message that the movie has, and then like not only is there like the influence of the director, but it is also well directed. Like as you go through it, it's a good movie. So it's not just the director, it is a good movie. And then the last one is like each of the movies that he picked on his list, there's a shift in perspective that takes place as you watch the movie, and it has an impact on everyone who watches it.
Yeah, I think that was my goal. Oh, the directing thing was more along the lines of actually it's kind of the opposite. If I can watch, it's okay. You wrote it down, but apparently wrote it wrong. So, A-. So no, not even. I was like 5. So
you're Asian. A- is still failing, dude.
That's true. But that was more like a B-. So B is bad.
So true failure.
A is acceptable. Okay.
True failure.
Acceptable or acceptable plus. But sort of along the lines of, I actually don't want to see the director in the film. I want to be so wowed by this film that I can't really detect the director's hands involved in how it's done. And that's a little bit tricky because, I mean, usually for me, after watching the second, third, fourth time, I can see where like the director's signature kind of techniques are and everything like that. But if the movie kind of wows me for like a third or fourth time and I still can't really see what he's trying to do in order to tell the story, that kind of heightens the quality of the movie for me. Yeah. And so, but I think it's so, other than that, I think actually our lists are in a sense similar, but we just have different opinions about what's good.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, as we go through this, Isaac will frequently tell me that I am wrong.
Oh yes, she's wrong all the time.
So it's we have our own opinions, and mine are apparently wrong, and Isaac's opinion.
I'm sure she thinks I'm wrong many times too.
I think you have an interesting perspective that I disagree
Interesting
with.
means wrong.
It's really sad, but anyone who knows me knows that that's kind of true. If I say interesting, it usually means like, oh, I don't agree with you. How do we continue this conversation?
That's interesting. Wrong.
Little blaring red signs.
Yeah. And then at the end of each episode, we're going to just kind of round it out with what we call a dime segment. Why do we call it a dime segment?
Okay, so the reason, the reason why is so the part that we like talk about like why we like it is we were fondly terming it our 2 cents. So it was like our 2 cents piece, and so it's like because we're putting in our 2 cents, and so this one we called the dime segment because it's a quote and a joke. Because other people's words mean more than ours. Oh,
that's quite true.
and so it's supposed to.
You heard it here first, guys. You're listening to people who don't think that their words are worth very much, who will quote people that we think are worth more to listen to.
Yes.
And I think that basically sums up our podcast.
Which means that guess what, guys? It's time for the dime segment. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so the quote of the day is part of the reason. We
didn't even talk about what the dime segment was. So the dime segment is actually the dime segment for those of you who are still listening. Thank you. The dime segment is going to be where we either say a joke of the week, or we just bring out a quote from an interesting quote that we thought could be part of our podcast. Most of these are going to probably be found by Rosemary, although I'm sure I'm going to have some input as well.
You shall be surprised and delighted and probably sigh a bunch of times. So we'll see what happens.
So go for it.
Okay, so because today I have been excited and I have prepared for this, I have a joke and I have a quote. I have both. Okay,
oh, man. So get ready, everybody.
Get ready. Okay.
What's coming up first?
No, the quote.
The quote is coming up first.
The quote comes first. Okay, and part of it's because this is their first podcast. This is their first episode of the podcast, and so it's something where the reason why we were doing this, I really thought that this one resonated, but it's something where Jessica Hish is the one who said this, but it's the work that you do while you procrastinate is probably the work you should be doing for the rest of your life. And I really liked that because whenever I have free time, I am writing and singing and talking to people about random things. So you're telling me that I should
be sleeping and eating and playing video games.
Honestly, dude, if I could get paid to do that, I might.
Well, there are people being paid for like playing video games, like
or
Twitch.
Like sleep tests where you go and test
on mattresses. Right. Oh man.
Oh,
why are we doing the podcast? Let's go.
Let's go do that.
Or be a food critic, right? Like Anton Ego from Ratatouille.
See, but I don't have that level. I would just be enjoying the food so much that I would give a review, but I don't know. I feel like I'd either be too mean and then I'd feel horribly guilty about it because these people are like giving me like their life essentially on a plate. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? It's not that good. Like, I couldn't
so you would pretend to eat, like, you would pretend to enjoy it. You're like, this is so good. Oh, it's so good. Oh.
I'd have to, and then when it was like really good, I'd be like, okay, I'm staying here. Can you just feed me more, please? And they wouldn't get rid of me for a while, and I feel like that's not a very good reputation to have. Anyway, but I really liked that quote, and anyway, and so the joke. You ready?
I shall steel myself. Here we go.
Good. Okay, so 2 antennas met on a roof, fell in love, and got married. The ceremony wasn't much, but the reception was excellent. Shut up! It's amazing. It was fabulous.
That was very funny.
It was so good. Oh,
very funny.
You don't understand. Like, my face is probably red right now. I really, really, really enjoy these kind of jokes. So
it's a good thing this is a visual podcast, right?
That's why I'm describing the color of my face. Well, at least I'm just saying the color of my face. If I described it, it would take a lot longer. But yeah. So anyway, but that's us. That's who we are for the moment.
Yeah.
And
hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah. This was our introductory podcast.
And we will pick the movie for the next episode.
Oh, that's right.
Because I
think we were supposed to do that before.
That is probably true.
We messed up, guys. We're sorry.
We'll get it right next time. So
we were so excited about our first recording. And
yeah. No, really though.
It's okay.
I hope you guys like this. Anyway, okay, so Isaac is going to pick it from the hat that you can't see.
I'm going to pick it.
Yeah,
okay.
Isaac is going to pick it.
So
I prepared the hat. You can pick it from the hat.
You can hear that rumbling of the thing, so...
You're going to make me read it?
Oh, I'm supposed to read it.
You pick it from the hat, you read it.
All right.
If you can read my writing.
Palm Springs.
Oh, okay.
Wait, is that... That's not a location, right? That's a movie? Okay, all right.
It's a movie.
So, Palm Springs.
Okay, and
isn't that a city?
It also, yes, it is. It's in California. No, so Palm Springs is a time loop movie, and you will find more about it next week. And Isaac will find more about it this week because
I'm supposed to be excited to watch this movie right now.
As you could probably tell, this is on my list and not his because he very clearly didn't recognize the movie.
Palm Springs.
And it's a very, very new movie, so I was a little impressed that it made it onto my top 10 that instantaneously. But that's what we're gonna go over the next time that we come in. So
cool.
Feel free to watch it yourself. It is a really good movie.
Yeah, and we're releasing this intro podcast with this the first of our movie kind of not reviews, but just I guess I don't know what to call it.
Our top 10. Our enjoyable and entertaining top 10.
So the next episode, you guys can definitely just hop on in and listen to it. But before we end, Rosemary, where can people find you?
So
she just gave me the biggest eyes ever. Like she wasn't expecting this. I don't know why. I told her I would be asking her this.
No, during the headlight, it happened. I was excited, and then we were done, and we're not done, and it just was weird. Anyway, so you guys can find the Bread and Thorns Studios Instagram. It's literally bread.thorns.studios with the Instagram, and then mine for the poetry is rose.e. or rose_e, and then it's like 2 or 3 underscores. If it pulls up, I'm adding to my bio that I'm working with the Bread and Thorn Studio, so you should be able to find it in there.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage everybody check her stuff out on Instagram. And I've only seen a few, but the few I've seen are pretty decent.
Thank you. And feel free to
no, they're really good, but
feel free to go check out his YouTube channel because it is really cool. I actually like some of the music that's on there. I feel bad.
She likes some of the music.
Wait,
guys.
Okay. I'm very, very like. I have a lot of love for a lot of music, and so it's something where I normally base it on the songs. And so he has some ones that are in there that I was like, oh my god, I love this. And then there are other ones that are just they're really good, but they just didn't hook me. But I know that like I'm also not who he's aiming for. Like I normally don't listen to lo-fi unless I'm actually like studying or something, and even then I'll just put on like piano instrumental stuff in the background because that's what I like. But I've shown some of his stuff to some of my friends, and they really, really like it. So like it's a really, really good vibe. Feel free to go check it out.
Thank you. Yeah. So in almost everything that I do, I have a kind of like a handle name that I go across almost everything. And the handle name is Ichthyod. So it's spelled ICHTHYOID. And so if you just go onto YouTube, you go to youtube.com/Ichthyod, you should find me. or you can just search my name, Isaac Hu, Isaachu, and you should find me as well. My icon is like a guy,
in a fishbowl playing a piano. It's a little black and white sketch.
Yeah, the artist that we were working with before, he's actually the one that drew that, and so I'm really proud of that sketch.
It's a really cool sketch.
Yeah.
It's just that in a really small icon, you're not.
Oh yeah, you can't really tell what's going on, and so you can search
for
me on YouTube. The same thing, you can search for that on Instagram. I don't really post on Instagram. I think I'm still getting used to it. But you can follow me on there if you want. I do have a blog that I write on Coil, and so if you go to coil.com, Coil is spelled COIL, so coil.com, and then again I think it's like /u, so for user, and then /ichthyoid, ICHTHYOID. You'll find me on there as well. And
that one is actually really cool, and I have yet to read one that I wasn't thoroughly entertained by. And trust me, I would tell you if I wasn't.
Oh yeah. So for I should have said this before, but for my blog,
guys.
it's okay. It's okay. We can power through this one.
Got this.
So for my Coil blog, I actually don't really write on most of the things I put on there aren't necessarily creatively oriented, but just thoughts I have on the rest of things in life. And including finances and things like that. And so if you're interested, and certainly follow me on there, I would definitely appreciate any subscribers or followers on Coil. And so I think that's everything for me, right?
I think so.
I think so.
Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And you should be able to just go to our next episode should you care to hear the sound of our voices more than you have in this time period.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Alright.
No, wait, next one.
Next one.
And the next one. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.